Hello, my name's Ziggy, and welcome to Tabletop Geekbots. Today, I'd like to look into something that I wanted to do for quite a while, but never really quite found an opportunity to try. As you know, or as we hope you know if you've watched any of the battle reports on this channel, we're in the middle of running a campaign for Necromunda, and we'd like to look at maybe ways of adding a little bit extra spice or depth to the narrative of that campaign as we continue forward. To do that, there is a certain type of character or model that I'd like to bring in to the system, but unfortunately there are no rules for those models in Necromunda currently. So, what I'd like to do is for you to relax, sit back, and join me as we explore how to bring Space Marines into the world of Necromunda. So, Space Marines, the poster boys of Games Workshop, and probably their most recognizable creations. These towering, gene-enhanced super soldiers spend their time stomping their way across the galaxy, mercilessly crushing the enemies of the Imperium as they go about the job of protecting mankind from sinister Xenos races, never-ending chaos incursions, and at times, even humanity itself. As well as being the best-selling range of miniatures ever produced by GW, they have been the main characters in numerous video games over the years, including the highly successful Dawn of War series, and more recently, the vastly popular Space Marine and Space Marine 2, the latter of which even led to GW's favourite sons getting their very own episode in the animated anthology series Secret Level on Amazon TV, which, in my humble opinion, was an absolutely brilliant representation of the sheer destructive power and implacable will that I have always seen as a defining aspect of Space Marines in the 40k lore. Love them or hate them, the Adeptus Astartes represent one of the most iconic aspects of GW's 40k universe, and you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone involved in the hobby who hasn't owned at least one Space Marine at some point in time. In fact, they are so synonymous with Warhammer that almost every game in the sci-fi side of GW has included rules for them to some degree. From Warhammer 40k to the Horus Heresy, Kill Team, Legion Imperialis, and even the much-loved and sorely missed classics like Battlefleet Gothic and Space Hulk. In fact, the only game I can think of that's missing from this list is what I believe to be Games Workshop's best narrative-based campaign game ever designed, and that is, of course, Necromunda. Now, Necromunda, as a setting, is actually designed to focus almost solely on those downtrodden citizens, gangs, and hangers-on who somehow manage to scratch out a living in the slums and industrial complexes of the Hive, as well as occasionally touching upon the nobles of the great houses, who spend their time either enjoying the opulent excesses available to them, or throwing on a suit of nightmare-inducing slaughter armour in a vain attempt to prove to Daddy just how grown-up they actually are. So it's no surprise that the Adeptus Astartes haven't really found their way into this setting. Why would one of the Emperor's Angels of Death concern themselves with the wretched scum living out their meaningless lives in the depths of the Underhive? What reason would they ever have to tread the dank and twisted warrens, or look upon the junk-strewn shores of the subsea? Well, there is actually one very good reason. You see, the Imperial Fists, the yellow-clad, soul-suckingly straight-laced sons of Rogel Dorn, regularly recruit from the hives of Necromunda, which means that they maintain a permanent presence on the planet, and have been known to take potential recruits from the gangs, ruthlessly testing them until only the strongest and most cunning are left standing. This means that for those arbitraries looking to add something a little bit different to their campaign, there's nothing stopping you from dropping an Imperial Fist into the middle of two gangs scrapping it out. You know, kind of like a talent scout taking in a practice session, or watching from the stands to see how potential recruits perform during a big game. And if that scout just happens to be a towering murder machine encased in ceramite and wielding a bolt gun, well then that's just a bonus all round really. So, if we don't have any official rules for Space Marines in Necromunda, how do we go about building our own? Well, for me personally, I think it starts with finding a good reference point, something to start the process off on a solid footing. And luckily for us, Games Workshop have provided the perfect model and profile for this job. Let me introduce you to Vandoff the Fallen. Now, Vandoff here is definitely 100% categorically not a Space Marine. Just ignore those clearly recognizable pieces of armor, the Space Marine style combat knife with a blood drop symbol and Roman numeral 9 on its scabbard, and absolutely forget about those ports plastered across his arms and shoulders. It's all just coincidence, it means nothing, nothing at all. But just for a second, let's pretend that he is a Space Marine who has somehow lost his way in Necromunda. Maybe a Blood Angel who's trodden too far down the path of the Red Thirst. Either way, he's one of the Emperor's very own Adeptus Astartes. If that is the case, then suddenly we have something official to reference as a jumping off point. So let's have a look at what GW have given us as his stats. Okay, well, so it's not bad, but it doesn't exactly scream gene-enhanced super soldier, killer of Xenos and slayer of gribbly chaos things. In fact, it's likely that an experienced gang leader would barely break his sweat kicking 7 shades of hell out of him, which, if I'm honest, isn't exactly the look I was going for. So what do we do if the reference point for a Space Marine in Necromunda is just a little bit, well, underwhelming? My plan is actually pretty simple. Vandoff is a Space Marine missing, in my opinion, probably the most important aspect of what makes a Space Marine special, and that's their armor. And the Astartes power armor is the perfect vehicle to use to fix any areas we feel aren't currently up to scratch with the profile. Now, before we dive into the guts of how we build an Astartes more in tune with the lore and books of 40k, we need to set some ground rules. I don't want this profile to just be made up. I want it, as much as possible, to be grounded in the rules of Necromunda. I want it to be built using the official guidelines and limitations that anyone would face when building a gang. And the best way I've come up with to do this is to start with the new Venator gang roster that was released earlier this year, and then combine that with the advancement rules that you can find in the core rulebook to make any changes I feel need to be made. These rules give us the costs associated with every kind of advancement available in the game, which means we can build up our Astartes following the same rules any other fighter would follow, while also keeping in mind the maximum characteristic values and advancement limits that are stipulated in the core rules. So, looking through the Venator roster, the profile that most closely aligns to what we're aiming for is the Beastman Hunt Leader. We'll use the advancement costs to tweak this profile until it matches up to Vandoff's, and then add in the skills needed to make it feel more like what we'd expect from a Space Marine in the lore. This means we'll be adding +1 movement, willpower and initiative. The final one, because Vandoff's heavy Carapace armor applies a -1 modifier, so if he wasn't wearing it, he'd have an initiative of 2+. As for skills, sticking with 4, I'd keep Fearsome, but get rid of Hurl, Crushing Blow, and Spring Up. Instead, I would go for Nerves of Steel for the chance to avoid pinning, True Grit for the increased resilience, and Hip Shooting for the intimidation factor of an armoured gun nut advancing on his enemies while delivering mass reactive rounds to the face. Taking this all into account, this is the standard profile we'd end up with for a Space Marine in Necromunda. With the basics covered, we now get to the fun part of this exercise, and that's designing the Astartes power armor itself. It's our opportunity to raise the bar and make ourselves a Space Marine that truly represents the power, lethality, and relentlessness of the Adeptus Astartes, which is so iconic in the 40k universe. So, where do we begin? Astartes power armor is a complex fusion of reinforced layers of protective material, fiber bundle muscles, sensors, environmental systems, monitoring packages, and a whole host of other equipment, all designed to turn a single Space Marine into an unstoppable weapon of war. For the purposes of this exercise, we're going to focus on 5 separate areas of the armor and figure out what advancements or equipment we need to apply to each in order to give us the effects we're looking for. These will be layered armor, enhanced life support, powered enhancements, black carapace integration, and auto senses. Ensuring our Space Marine has the best save available is the first step in designing our armour, which means starting off with an armoured undersuit and then slapping a set of heavy carapace armour over the top. This combination gives us a 3+ save as standard and a 2+ save against any attacks originating in our Space Marine's front arc, a handy little bonus when we plan on advancing towards the enemy whenever possible. In addition to this, we're going to pay the points for a hazard suit, so we can be immune to the Blaze and Radface traits. This isn't technically legal, as you can only have one set of armour, but I refuse to have a Space Marine that could potentially be sent into a tailspin because he just happened to be hit by a card or a flame stick and got a little bit hot and bothered. An Astartes' resilience is more than just his armor save. They should be able to shrug off hits that would end most other fighters, while also being able to continue fighting even after suffering horrendous damage. To show this, we're going to raise our Marine's toughness value by 2, as well as their wound characteristics by 1, taking the former to 6 and the latter to 4, which is the upper limit for both characteristics. If you've ever read anything about how power armor works, you'll have heard of the electrically motivated fiber bundles that functions as the suit's synthetic muscles, and the microhydraulic actuators that support precise fluid motion. Together, they form a complex system that basically allows our Space Marine to perform any number of superhuman feats of strength. To represent this, we're going to boost our Marine strength characteristic by 2 to the maximum of 6, and add in the effects of being equipped with a drop rig, which means our Marine can perform an action to drop from a height of up to 12 inches without taking any damage. The integration between armour and marine via the Black Carapace implant is the actual reason our Space Marine can do all the crazy things that we have come to expect from one of the Emperor's Angels of Death. It means the armour basically acts like a second skin, and provides them with the ability to move, fight, and function as if they weren't carrying around somewhere in the region of 200 to 300 extra kilograms. To represent all the bonuses associated with this integration, we're going to buy +1 to our Marine's weapon skill, attacks, movement, and initiative characteristics, all of which I think can be pretty easily justified. Built into the armor's helmet, Autosenses provides our Space Marine with a suite of sensor feeds, environmental inputs, and targeting systems that gives them almost complete situational awareness when in battle. And while there isn't enough equipment available in Necromunda to truly cover off all aspects of the autosenses, we can at least cover off a few. Firstly, the enhanced targeting systems means our Space Marine should benefit from a +1 to their ballistic skill. Additionally, the effects of darkness, smoke, or flashbangs should absolutely not be something we need to worry about. By including a set of photo goggles, our Marine will be able to see through any smoke, increase their visibility by 9 inches when using the Visibility X rules, and will also gain a +1 bonus when testing against the blind condition. Taking all of this into consideration, this is the profile we end up with, which, if I'm honest, is pretty much in line with what I would expect from an Adeptus Astartes in the context of Necromunda. The bonuses and benefits of the power armor make a massive difference to just how imposing and formidable our Space Marine is, which is exactly what it's meant to do, so I'm really pleased with how this has all worked out. But there's still one more thing we need to look at before we can send our pet Space Marine out into the big wide world of the Underhive, and that's their weapons. We're going to go with the classic loadout that has been the staple of Space Marine players everywhere, which means equipping them with the trusty bolt gun and combat knife, as well as frag and crack grenades. Now, the great thing about Necromunda is that the range and variety of weapons available to choose from is definitely not something it struggles with. There is a plethora of different options out there, whether it's a plasma pistol and power sword combo, a power fist, thunderhammer, heavy bolter, or even some crazy Xenos weapon that the Inquisition would absolutely want to talk to you about. Necromunda has it in abundance, and all it will cost you is the respect and friendship of those unfortunate souls on the receiving end of whatever horrific weapons you decide to choose. So that's it. The final profile is pretty much what I hoped for, and while it is expensive, you do get a lot of bang for your buck, and I'm personally looking forward to dropping one of these into a game at some point, just to see what actually happens, and if any of the gangers think they've actually got what it takes to stand toe-to-toe with an Angel of Death. Now, if you've hung in there with us until the end, then thank you, and I hope you found it interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this design, and if you think you'd actually give this a go and try it out in a game. Once again, if you've enjoyed this, why not give it a like and consider subscribing? It really helps us out, and it's free. Thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again next time. Cheers.